Hello and welcome to my first ever attempt at a serious video project. I am John, but I'm also a TF2 nerd, and I want to share some of my knowledge about the game which might just take your gameplay to another level. Keep in mind that I'm not a professional player. Hell, I've never even played TF2 competitively aside from the disaster of Valve matchmaking competitive for a couple of games. But that's not the point. Ever since I took up rocket jumping for the first time with my friend back in 2017, I never looked at the maps the same again. And since then, I have spent countless hours looking at maps in different ways with different classes. At first, it was as simple as what you can jump on and how to jump on it. Then I learned about damage cancelling with surfs, C-tab jumps, and so on. But when I started taking the verticality of rocket jumps away from myself by playing the spy, I couldn't accept that the gameplay becomes so horizontal. Many people tend to do things the same way all the time after they learn the map. Take the same routes, go to the same sniper locations, and find the same ways to die to spam every game. It's not always easy to give things a fresh look, especially after a long time in the map, but trust me when I say it, there are ways to make you learn the map better than most players, and it's not that hard. Now, don't get the bad idea. Playing the way you do is nothing wrong. This game doesn't always require brains, but if you like looking fancy with spy and getting called cheese for your movement of all things, listen up. This is how to find walkable spots that can't be seen by just looking at them, and the introduction to clip brushes. A clip brush is an object placed in Hammer when creating maps, such an object that we cannot see with our eyes in Valve servers. Their use in map creation is to create boundaries for certain spaces, fix map collision, and make sure players can't walk somewhere in general. And because of them, casual players get the idea that you can't go up somewhere because it's the norm. Being able to see the brushes in private servers can make you find spots that stray from the usual norm of not being able to go somewhere. Here is how to launch a server with the brushes visible in just a minute. Now to begin with, just launch a private game as you usually would, then input the commands as follows. These commands will allow you to have a game with no timer, see the brushes, be invincible, and or have a lot of health. The Buddha command, in particular, should be used if you want to explore spots near cliffs that usually would kill you, but add health with the other command by hurting your player for a negative number, since the Buddha command tends to mess with your rocket jumps when you're at 1 HP. Now that you have your favorite map with those settings, here is what you look for. First of all, there are spots that stick out of the brush. In some cases, map creators will put clip brushes around the map a tad bit poorly and use objects with collision on the outside of the map, thinking that there's no need to remove the default collision. That would be the case, except when the clip brush doesn't cover everything perfectly. Here is how it looks when you're not seeing the clip brushes. It looks like you're levitating. Funny, isn't it? There will be times when you find objects sticking out, but you won't be able to stand on them. That would mean that the map creator removed the collision from that object when creating the map to prevent things that we're trying to do now. Now, getting to the fun part, almost all the time when there's an inclined clip brush touching a vertical wall, there appears one pixel that you can walk on. Similarly, sloped walls touching a vertical clip brush may create the same, but I find that to be way less common. I will not go too much into detail since Sketchek has created a great guide that holds up to this day, but I will make some notes for what is relevant for exploring maps yourself. The easiest way to test a pixel walk is to fly above it with no clip and hit your head against the wall while pressing W. When you know that you can stand on a spot for certain, you can start checking for your way to get up there. There are certain times where brush commands will not help you. Here we will be relying on our knowledge of props and how the creator of the map used them, since more often than not, map creators don't use clip brushes in the middle of the map for no reason. What I do in this case is look for places that I can't get up to, and see if any objects can help me to do so. Spots like this may just help you get away from flames or explosives, while other times it's a good decloak spot. Practically any place that you don't expect to be able to go to, or a place you don't check for spies, others won't too, and climbing there will probably make it a good spot for some time. If you come so far to find all kinds of different spots on your favorite maps, chances are that many of those spots are not very useful or are very situational. Let's take a look why we may still use some of those spots even if they look useless at first. Most of the times, people plan their routes unconsciously, unless there is a real threat or a reason for them to do it otherwise. The best example of doing it unconsciously is walking out of spawn and going to the front line. The way you usually walk is autopilot and a habit. But if you see a spy on your way bumping somewhere, you start doing it consciously to avoid a possible threat or to eliminate it. As you may understand, as a spy player, surprise factor from a spy in the game is way greater if the spy cannot be seen until the last moment or seems to not exist at all. But it all goes to waste if spy is spotted, or even worse, dead. The reason spies are seen around the map when they are invisible is not only because others moved unpredictably and bumped them, but more because the spy planned poor routes. Planning a route can be practically the same as creating a rollout as a soldier. Except with soldier, you prioritize speed and as little exposure as possible to common damage sources, and as a spy, you prioritize speed and no exposure at all. By being exposed as a spy, I mean that you are in a vulnerable state where a person or people know where you are. That can be made less of a problem with proper disguises, but cloaking and being not seen when you don't want to be is a far better and more reliable alternative. Now, I covered all of this because many spies tend to do things unconsciously too, and sometimes I fall into that category as well, which is a problem. Creating new routes that don't intercept with enemies is the key to staying hidden. Now remember my beloved Badwater pixel walk? It's an awesome route to get behind the players and decloak in plain sightline and still live. Which means, even if you don't have the cloak on the end of the route, people are very unlikely to see you. The pixel walk is not that hard to do when you know how to do it, and it has practically no exposure risk involved, while being fast enough to choose it over the alternative routes. Here are some other examples that are easy to perform on a daily basis. On Blue and Badwater, usually spies have 3 routes to take, which are the same routes that any other class would take except the classes that rocket jump. But you can actually take the route here, and climb above the tunnel with just a bit of practice while avoiding practically any risk of spam, unless your team is hiding in the corner of course. A route like this tends to be useful if you can do it well, while once again lowering the risk of exposure since it's not that out in the common lines of fire. Moving on to Frontier, on Red if you want to get unexpected stabs you climb up here, but the spot is becoming more common knowledge, so keep that in mind. And the last point, going around this way to the health pack or people near it can be a safer choice almost any time instead of taking the inside, since you won't even bump anyone else on the outside. These were examples of routes that you may want to take to reach a certain place while lowering the risk of being spotted when cloaked. But there are times where having speed is more important than negating all the risk of exposure. That's why a good tip is to take common routes in uncommon ways. That works especially well with the Death Ringer equipped and may lead to random surprise stabs. The old way of doing this is taking corners wide since people tend to take them close, but if you have a chance to get even a slight high ground, you may get stair stabs where you have no right to do that. Just do me one favor please, stop walking into common sightlines, dying, and then blaming the game. That rocket that you died to was going to fly there regardless of if you walked in there or not. The problem was you walking there instead of around. Now the extra fun part, where we reap our reward for learning the map and trash the last section of the tutorial completely. Up until this point I was explaining things for people who want to be as effective with spy as they can. But there are times where you just want to Having fun in the game is what matters the most in the end. Therefore, jump stabs from safe routes are not always the go-to play even for me, and it shouldn't be for you. What matters as a spy is versatility more than anything. And here are some ways to use props to misdirect enemies for trick stabs when playing casually.
Holy shit, nice troll spy. That was fucking hot, mate.
By teaching new people and seeing how they learn new maps, I came up with a conclusion. Newer players remember maps by rooms and common routes. Learning some less known room props that you can quickly get on and off of is an easy setup for stair stabs. Since stair stabs are rather simple, I don't think I need to explain them in depth. What I feel they need to explain is the fact that pixel walks and props that you get up on change how people strafe towards you, which may or may not mess up your circle strafing depending on the player you're going up against. Now, by saying that we trashed the last part of what I was talking about, I wasn't fully correct. The last few practical uses for routing that we learned can be applied for aggressive playstyle too. When playing aggressively, we prefer speed over exposure, which means that we only want our target not to see us, therefore the routes we create can be far more flexible and in the open. By making such plays, we end up with very short routes that get us back to the player that we just escaped from another angle. Those routes usually lead to stabs, because when people see a spy run away, they don't expect the same spy to stab them just a second after from a different angle. I know I have mentioned speed and exposure many times, but in the end what it is just how quickly and unexpectedly you can go to places. You can easily implement this into your routing by learning spots that go around one object that people don't usually go around. In the end, how you learn spy is very personal. The same goes for the maps that you play in. It's the unique playstyle and the ability to change your approach to the game that sets out good spies from great spies. That is why I wanted to teach you how to find spots for yourself and how to create reliable routes, rather than throwing a bunch of spots that I have found for you to learn, since the more spots I show you, the more of them may become common knowledge and not be as good anymore. By no means is my approach to the game what makes me a good spy, and by no means am I a great spy. But as long as I can help some of you to find excitement in this game that I like so much, I think I have reached my goal. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I will not see you around, especially in the common spots.